Excel is made up of a bunch of worksheets, and here's a worksheet. So each worksheet is made up of columns. So here are the different columns, and these are the column headers, which I'm clicking on, all of these letters, and rows, and these are the row headers, which I'm clicking on, all of these numbers over here. So a spreadsheet's made up of columns and rows. And at the intersection of a column and a row, so there, row 7, column H, is a cell. And that cell address, or that cell's name, is going to be its row and its column. So we'd say, hey, that is cell H7, just like this one is E2, or this one is C, column C, row 4. As a matter of fact, if you look right up here, you can see in this area, which is called the name box, the actual name of that cell, whatever cell you've clicked on. That one is B2, right? So that's how spreadsheets are made up. They're just this honeycomb grid of all of these columns and rows intersecting to create cells. They're actually quite big. This one has 1,048,576 possible rows, and it goes way the heck out to the right. So as the rows start to repeat, as we move out here to the right, we start moving through various combinations of the alphabet letters until we get all the way out here to whatever that is, XFD. So a long ways. Down here at the bottom, we have worksheets. You can see all these colored worksheets. That's because I colored them, because I like colors. You could change these worksheets, like I could drag them around and put them into different orders, or I could double click them to change their names. Example worksheet. And then I hit enter to accept that. So I double clicked it, and then I typed example sheet. Maybe I want a different name, and I press enter. I could also right click that and choose tab color, which is my favorite, and I could choose a color. For that one I chose bright red, and then just drag that around and put it wherever I want. If my scroll bar, you can see here that it looks like I'm not seeing all my sheets because my horizontal scroll bar to the right is blocking them. I could click this little green button right there, and it'll show me whatever more worksheets are in my workbook. So a collection of worksheets is a workbook. This is the Finding Your Way Around Excel workbook. We would also sometimes say it's the file. So that's another phrase that could be used for it. If I wanted to add a new worksheet to this workbook, I'd click this plus sign right here. Woohoo! New worksheet. Woohoo! New worksheet. Woohoo! New worksheet. I just keep clicking it and woohoo! New worksheet. All right, and I can move this scroll bar by, dragging right there. You see those 3 little dots? I get this left-right arrow thing when I go over it, and I can drag there. So that's some of the basic layout of a worksheet. When I start typing something in a cell, I just click on it and start typing. So great, happiness, perfect, right? It almost fits perfectly. It's just on the edge there. But what if I had typed into that? And notice when I select that cell, up here in the formula bar, it shows me whatever the cell's contents are. As a matter of fact, to change what's in a cell, I could either double click into that cell and then maybe start using my arrow keys to the edge to the left or right within the text or numbers or whatever's there. Or I could click up here and I could finish typing the rest of my thought, which is happiness is a warm bagel. Definitely. A warm bagel on a cool Sunday morning, that's happiness. So that's kind of how we enter stuff really simply. And numbers are the same way, but watch what happens when I enter some numbers right there, right? What was in cell G6 is still there. I just no longer see it because now there's something in cell H6. But if I look up in my formula bar, I see all of the contents there. Well, I could adjust the column width by coming up to the top. And notice when I go right on this little separator bar between the columns, I get this black left-right arrow again. And I could click, left click, drag, bring it over, and I've adjusted my widths, right? I could also just double click and it automatically brings me to a perfect fit. So I could do that for the column widths, and I could also do that for the row heights if I wanted to adjust those manually like that. You have these things up here called ribbon menus. I've heard them called ribbons, I've heard them called menus, so I'm going to call them ribbon menus. And if you click on any of them, you get different choices. If I click the file ribbon, I kind of go to a whole new place where it's a little startling, like, what happened to my worksheet? So, how do I get back to my worksheet? There's a little arrow here. But before we click that arrow, If you just look at the options, this is where you have save, save as, print, share, export, and so I click this and I go back and I'm back to my worksheet. If my ribbons were to ever disappear, maybe sometime I want to do that intentionally to make them disappear, I could click this little collapse the ribbon right there and wow, they disappeared, but how do I get my choices back? Well, I could click and they come popping down, but if I click away, they disappear again. How do I get them to stay once more? I come back to the right and click in that little pen and now they're going to stay there. Under view, we have the normal view, we have the page break preview, and we have the page layout view. So if you're looking at your computer at home and it's like, why is it funky? You could try clicking one of those buttons, which is under the view ribbon. Alternatively, you can click down here and have the same changes occur. Also, I find that when people are first learning about Excel, sometimes they'll be like, what happened to my grid lines? I don't have grid lines. So under page layout or, again, under view, here we have grid lines. I'm going to do it under page layout and I could turn my grid lines on and off. Notice the grid lines going on and off. I could also say I want them to print. I could turn my headings on and off, which are the row headings and the column headings. And I could also say I want those to print. So those are some nice options to know about. Finally, the very last thing, I want to show you the status bar. So the status bar is down here at the bottom, and right now it's saying ready. If I look at some sample data, notice what happens over here when I start selecting a little data on the status bar. It starts to give me a count of how many records I've selected. That's pretty cool. And if I'm selecting numbers, it'll actually start to give me a sum and an average. So if I quickly want to add something up or get the average of something, I could just do that and then look to my status bar. It gives me those figures, which I think is really handy and nifty. So that's a little bit about the basics of Excel and finding your way around Excel. We've learned what columns and rows are and what cells are and what a cell's name or cell's address is. We've also learned about the name box and the formula bar. We learned about worksheets, which are all these things down here, and how we could change their order and double click on them to change their name and right click them and choose tab color to change their color, and how all those worksheets, a collection of worksheets, is a workbook. We also learned about the ribbon menus up top and how to make them appear and disappear. And, this top left area, we learned a little bit about that. In the bottom right area, we learned a little bit about that. And we learned about the status bar and then making a few simple adjustments to our worksheet so that we could get started making things look beautiful working with numbers.